Is it possible for one institution to symbolize an entire community? In the early days of Couillardville, it certainly was. From the 1860s to 1964, virtually all the school-age children within sound of its bell attended Couillardville School and the log cabin facility that preceded it. This wasn't an ordinary school such as today's educational supermarkets, where hundreds of kids are bussed in from miles around each day. Rather, Couillardville School was a special, intimate place where all the children studied together in the same classroom and were instructed by the same teacher. The sort of school that required exceptionally focused students and extremely versatile teachers. I should know because I studied at Couillardville School from the 1st through the 8th grade and taught there from 1951 until 1955. Couillardville School typified the one-room schools that predominated in the sparsely settled regions of rural Wisconsin, where the farms were far apart, the children relatively few, and the roads poor. The only practical solution was to collect all the school-age children together in one room at one time. Early schooling in Couillardville likely consisted of individual lessons delivered at home, then to larger groups of children gathered at one farmhouse. In the 1860s, a small log school building was erected on the site where Couillardville School would later be built. A few Indian youth joined the settlers' children in taking their lessons there. The schoolhouse we are familiar with was built around 1880. It was constructed from sawn timber and boards and set on a stone foundation. Broad concrete steps led up to the entryway, while 4 large windows down each side provided generous natural light. A handsome belfry capped the edifice. Inside, a storage closet and cloakroom flanked the entrance, and a big iron stove sat in the corner. The back wall was covered with a blackboard, and the teacher's desk was off to one side. Rows of desks filled the middle of the room. But what mattered most wasn't the furniture. It was the remarkably effective teaching that went on, despite the fact that the 25 or 30 pupils ranged in age from 6 to 15 and were divided into 8 grades. How was that possible? The teacher would gather the children into smaller groups by age at her desk and instruct them on their grade-appropriate lessons. Sometimes there would only be 1 or 2 pupils per grade, but they still received full attention. Meanwhile, the other students would be working quietly on their assignments. Rather than a confusion of conflicting lessons and instructions, this arrangement reinforced the learning that went on among the various grades. For instance, when the teacher called the 3rd graders to the front for their lessons, the 2nd graders would hear discussions of what they would later be learning, while 4th graders who may have missed something would have another chance to fill in that blank. Local instruction was enriched by supplemental programs broadcast across the state by radio on the WHA network from Madison. I recall they covered a variety of topics such as music, art, sciences, and even extended reading programs. A great favorite among my students was Ranger Mack, who taught them about conservation. The children learned more than the 3 R's at Couillardville School. They also learned life lessons about responsibility and cooperation. The older boys were expected to keep the wood stove fired in the winter and the walks and steps shoveled after snowfalls. Other children were responsible for washing the blackboard, dusting the erasers, emptying waste cans, sweeping the floors, and drawing water from the old-fashioned pump just outside the door. A very special duty was raising and lowering Old Glory each day. Perhaps that's another reason why the children who attended one-room rural schools were able to compete very effectively when they later transferred into city high schools. There was always time for a little fun during the academic day. Like children everywhere, Couillardville youngsters loved recess. In milder weather, favorite games were Red Rover, softball, fox and geese, or just playing on the swings and merry-go-round. In the winter, sledding down the adjoining hill on the McTravers property was always popular. Naturally, the community was actively involved in the school in numerous ways, whether raising funds, taking care of major maintenance issues, or providing room and board for the teachers. A favorite activity for students and parents alike was the annual Christmas program at the community hall. These were major productions that required weeks and weeks of preparation. Whether one big play or a combination of individual or small group recitations, most children were involved in some way, whether as performers, scenery makers, or stagehands. Their mothers also were involved, whether making costumes, helping with rehearsals, or making treats for the post-performance party. You could count on everyone attending, whether they had children involved or not. Couillardville School served the community faithfully and well until being overtaken by changing times. At the beginning of the 1965 school year, the school was closed and the children were thereafter bused into O'Connell for their lessons. Today, the old schoolhouse retains its pride of place as the last civic structure linking today's Couillardville with its past. Though it has lost its belfry, it remains as a gleaming reminder of when Couillardville School was the true heart and soul of the community.
Jewel was a school teacher, and she taught at Couillardville, and she got to going with Art, and they eventually got married.
She was looking to the east all the time, which I don't blame her one bit because she sure made a great decision.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's a great story. She was keeping her eye on Art.
Yeah, she was keeping her eye on Art.
And I always liked the teachers out there, especially Miss Carey. Alice.
We walked or biked to a one-room school, Couillardville School, which housed all 8 grades. I began first grade the year I was 4, turning 5 September 17th. The teacher said I could stay if I could maintain the grade level, which never became a problem. Betty Jakart took me to school with her to visit, but instead I stayed. One teacher handled the teaching of all subjects, supervised the playground, built the fires, maintained the building, as I found out when I graduated from Oshkosh State Teachers College.
The way they taught school in a one-room school, it was almost like when the teacher had the first and second grade up front reciting. It was always the way it went. First and second grade would go up and do their reciting. The others had to take care of themselves because she was busy with this first and second grade. But then, like when you were a 3rd or 4th grader and the 7th and 8th were up there doing their reciting, you were kind of paying attention to what they were saying because you were learning something about what they're learning. That was a strange phenomena in a school. You're learning from each other.
And of course, in my 7th and 8th grade, we had Agnes Flynn, but she was really a good teacher, you know. She was sort of strict, but she was really good.
Really good.
Miss Young, yeah, I liked her. I really did, yeah. I think it was Mrs. Ford who had the Arizona highway books. Beautiful colored pictures. I mean, how can you not like all the desert in bloom and the mountains and everything else, and then you saw the Grand Canyon and you go, wow, someday I'm going to go there. Well, I finally got to go there.
And then, as I recall, Mrs. Flynn retired and they brought in a teacher named Mrs. Gerler for 1 year. And in my view, it's too bad that Mrs. Flynn didn't spend another year there because I would have learned my multiplication tables much better had she stayed.
Well, as you and I know, there was a teacher that was really lax.
We got
To
away
say
with
the
a lot.
least.
We got away with a lot.
We got away with a little bit, yeah. When we'd go down to the river and swing in the trees. Probably enough said about that.
First memories.
Well, my first grade teacher was Mrs. Flynn. I mean, I'll never forget her. She was one of the nicest teachers there ever was. She would just do anything to help you. I mean, I learned an awful lot from her. She just, you know, would take every individual and do whatever she had to do to get you to learn. Yeah. So she was a very good teacher.
My best teachers, Lucy, Tommy, I really liked her, Janice.
Tell me about Lucy. What was it that made her such a good teacher?
She took a personal interest in each one of us. She was, and Ruthie, both of them, took a personal interest in each one of us, really helped us, and you felt like she was there just for you. They were both very good. They were all very good.
I remember once I came home and my mother said, John, I didn't see you outside for recess today, because of course we're right next door. You can't get away with nothing. And I kind of put my head down and said, no, I have to stay inside for a while. And she said, you were naughty? And I said, yeah, I threw a spitball or something, or threw a pen or something, and I have to stay inside, and Miss Tommy's making me copy a bunch of pages out of the dictionary at recess.
She was just a great teacher because she took time to sit with you and work with you with each individual. Now, some people could learn in 2 minutes, but take some other kids 10 minutes. And in today's society, there's just no way do they have the time, and not only that, they don't take the time to teach these children. Sure, they got special ed rooms and everything like that, but she only had one room. There were several special ed kids in that room, and she had to take care of them all. And they all got out of it learning a lot.
That was fun. You know, you got to do different things. You got to work and do things for the teacher. You know, she had little chores that you always have to collect the erasers at the end of the day. I remember that. The flag had to go up and down, and certain people would get to do the flag.
We did have one other piece of playground equipment. It wasn't intended that way, but on the back of the school there was an entrance to the basement, an outside entrance, which happened to have a standing rib steel roof on it, the bottom of which was about 3 feet off the ground, and the other end went up and then had a flat top where the door went in. That was our slide. But that was our entertainment, sliding off from that roof.
Oh, yeah, we used that a lot as a slide. I can remember using wax paper, taking our lunch paper, wax paper, and sitting on it to go down and make it slippery.
One of the things that I heard tell about is when Mrs. Jacart would do laundry, I'd run through under her clotheslines, and she'd always leave me a spot between Martin's bib overhauls hanging long. She'd leave a spot like this where my trail went through so I could go through.
There were 3 of us in my class. Noel Alberts. I was always envious of Noel because he came to school with the Wonder Bread and the bologna. And my mother always baked bread, and we had, you know, the leftover pot roast or whatever. So Noel and I would often trade sandwiches because he had all this fancy bread with the bologna in it consistently. It was and
Couillardville. Attended Couillardville School. When I started in the 4th grade, there was just Janice and I. And as the years went by, Gail moved in here, and then the Conkles, there was Ann Conkle, and then Arlene McDonald. So when we graduated, there were 5 of us. Now there are 2 of us left, Janice and I.